Hello to everyone that's joining. We're just going to let everyone come in before we get started. Okay, I think we'll make a start. Evening everyone, and welcome along to this Quality Meet Scotland webinar to launch the new Young Producer discussion groups. Just before we start, some housekeeping to help this evening. The webinar is being recorded and it will be uploaded onto our YouTube channel tomorrow. There are some buttons along the bottoms of your screen which should look like the picture here. If you have any technical problems with the Zoom, then please put them in the chat and John will hopefully help you out there. If you have any questions for myself and the speakers, then pop them into the Q&A, or if you'd like to share your experience or ask a question verbally, then use the raise hand function and we can let you speak. You don't need a video camera for this, just a microphone. So the agenda for this evening, I'll introduce my panelists for this evening, then go through the aim of the new groups, the importance to QMS of engaging with young producers, how a discussion group can benefit you, outline some next steps, and then we'll open up the discussion before finishing at 8 p.m. We will be taking some questions throughout the evening, so please pop them in the Q&A whenever they come to you. So some introductions. For those of you who don't know me, I am Beth Alexander. I work as a cattle and sheep specialist in the industry development team at QMS. I'm also an upland cattle and sheep farmer in Perthshire. I also have two panelists this evening. Firstly, Kate Rowell, the chair of QMS, and Andrew Marchant from Cloney Farm. I'll introduce them both more fully later on. We've also got John Evans here tonight, another cattle and sheep specialist from industry development. So if you've got any technical questions, please direct them to John. To give some context behind the launch of these groups and why we're here this evening, I've broken it down into three main aims. First of all, we want to develop business acumen within young producers. From personal experience, it can be daunting as a young person to walk into meetings and discuss and develop your ideas. It's also important to develop skills no matter what your role is in a business, not just if you are a business lead. So we want these groups to offer that opportunity. Secondly, we hope to create an honest and open platform to discuss relevant issues to your situation. Peer-to-peer learning is really valuable, so we'll offer the chance to learn from things others have tried and succeeded, but also others' mistakes. The third aim is to create a vehicle for young producers to feed into QMS work. Kate will expand on this, why this is important to us later on. But first of all, before we get started, I've got a poll that should be appearing on your screens. So how many of you have ever been involved in a discussion group before? We'll give you a minute or so to answer. Okay, so I think I've got everyone answered there. So 63% have never been involved in a discussion group before. So that shows you really why we're here tonight. We want to engage with as many younger producers as possible and allow you to get involved in something for yourselves. So how do I see these groups working? We are targeting those around young farmer age. So we are planning to align the groups with SAYSC's 3 areas, north, east and west, to group people together geographically. I will facilitate these groups, which will include organising biannual meetings for each group. I'm really keen for the topics to be tailored to the individuals within the group, so we can bring specialist speakers in on specific topic areas that there is a strong interest in. The groups will also have access to QMS industry development programmes, so there may be some individuals within the groups that would like to focus on carcass classification, for example, so we can run some meet the market workshops for them. Likewise, if there are some members that would want to do some benchmarking, we can set up some subgroups to look at that. The main point is we really want them to be demand driven, so you can get out what you want out of them. It doesn't matter if you're a dairy farmer, a hill shepherd, a tractorman, a student, everyone will have something to contribute and can learn from other people and other enterprises as well. Obviously, Quality Meat Scotland focuses on red meat production, but we can bring in speakers and other organisations to look at other aspects of agriculture. So these are not solely for red meat. I mentioned earlier, we want to create a vehicle for young producers to feed into QMS work. Kate Rowell has joined us this evening to give a wider QMS context on this. Kate took up the post of chair of QMS in October 2018. Kate is a 5th generation farmer. She runs a hill and upland farm near Peebles in the Scottish borders with her husband Ed. Kate is a qualified vet and worked in a mixed practice in the north of England for 8 years before she returned home to take over the reins of the family business. They now run 75 suckler cows and around 800 sheep on the 750 hectare Hundleshope farm on the Haston estate, where the family have been tenants for 150 years. So I'll pass over to you, Kate.
Thanks very much, Beth. I'm hoping you can hear me okay. My connection is not brilliant, but let's hope that it holds out long enough to do this. So it's really, really good to be here. QMS have got a lot of ways that we get information and feedback fed in, and we do have a lot of committees and things as well. But one thing that we are definitely lacking is the younger farmer's voice. We do try our best, but obviously us all being old, we maybe don't engage with you as much as we should. So this is one of the reasons why these groups have been set up and Beth's taken them on board. So just a wee bit more background on me. As Beth said, I'm a farmer and a vet. My husband and I were also monitor farmers. So I'm not going to expand on that because that's what Andrew's going to talk about, but that's a really interesting concept. And at our monitor farm, we had quite a lot of younger people came along, and I think they did get a lot out of it. I've also done the Scottish Enterprise Rural Leadership Programme, and I would strongly encourage you, if you get a chance to do that, have a look at it. It's really, really good. It's a mixture of ages. There were young farmers in my group when I did it, as well as older people in their 50s and 60s. So it's a really good vehicle as well if you get to that stage. So I'd encourage you to look at that. So I just wanted to tell you a wee bit about QMS, because if you're anything like me, I mean, before I joined the board of QMS, I really didn't know much about it at all. And as I get out and about, or did get out and about, and meet farmers around about the country, there's a lot of people who don't really understand what QMS is and what it does. So I just thought I'd run through that really quickly. We are an NDPB, which is a non-departmental public body, which means we're kind of attached to Scottish Government, but we're not really part of Scottish Government. But it does mean that we don't lobby people. We're not NFUS. We don't shout about things we're not happy about. What we do is we give advice to ministers. So we work alongside Scottish Government to try and get things working the right way, and NFUS are the ones who actually lobby them. We're funded by levy, so every sheep, every cow and every pig that's killed in Scotland has to pay, we have to have levy paid to us. So the farmer pays some of that and the processor pays some of that. So that's where we get our income from. But we also run the QMS Assurance Schemes, which I'm hoping you've heard of. And they're separate. So everybody has to pay the levy, no matter who you are. But our assurance schemes are voluntary and you can join them or not, it's up to you. But if you join them, you pay a fee and that fee covers the assurance schemes. So we don't make any profit out of those assurance schemes. We just run them on behalf of the industry. So there's a lot of challenges at the minute, as I'm sure nobody has to tell you. We have the environment and climate change high on the agenda, also the loss of biodiversity. People are always concerned about animal welfare and always will be, and that's a good thing. It should be encouraged. We should be doing our best to address that. And also people have concerns about health and how red meat in particular works with their diet. So we have to address all those things. And it's worth remembering when we do see all this nonsense that comes across from people who want to do our industry down, that 94% of our population do still eat red meat and enjoy it as part of a healthy, balanced diet. Farmers are the most trusted part of the supply chain, much more trusted by consumers than any of the other parts like supermarkets or even butchers. We are the ones that they trust. And in a recent survey we did, 85% of younger people are still buying and eating red meat themselves, and they do want to interact with us and engage with us and find out what they can do with it. So those are all really positive things. So the 4 pillars that QMS sort of pursue at the moment are to support, develop, promote and protect the red meat industry in Scotland. And we've got various different departments. It's not a big organisation. There's only 23 or 24 people work for QMS, but they do really punch above their weight and they do a lot of things. So we've got, in the sort of promote side of it, we've got marketing and communications, and they do all the consumer facing stuff. So they do the adverts, they do all the social media stuff. They run a website called the Scotch Kitchen, which many people maybe don't know it's QMS that do that because our name isn't there. But the Scotch Kitchen has lots of recipes and lots of messages about sustainability and things like that. And they look after the brand and try and promote Scotch beef, Scotch lamb, and specially selected pork, which we're really proud of. In that department, we also have a health and education team. And I'm saying team, but there are only 2 of them. And they go into schools when they can, and they do a lot of teaching about red meat and cooking and things like that. And in lockdown, they've produced a really good resource called Farming Footsteps, which takes children and anybody else that wants it through various different parts of the industry and teaches them about it. Also in that promote bit, we've got a department called Market Development, and their job really is export. So they're the ones that go to trade shows and help processors to get export certificates and help to get new markets going. And they also work with the butchers on the high street and help them to promote red meat. They give out leaflets and recipe cards and all this sort of thing. So on the support side, we have economic services who do all the price reporting that you might see in the paper or online. And they produce a lot of figures which are used extensively by Scottish Government and others to develop policy. So it's really important that you know where you're starting from when you have a policy. So they come up with all the numbers and figures that Scottish Government then use to decide what they're going to do next. And we also have brands integrity under the support banner, and that's the assurance schemes. And they deal with, there's over 10,000 members of the assurance schemes in Scotland. And it's really important, and I'll just pull this out a bit because I think a lot of people don't really understand what Scotch beef and Scotch lamb mean, and it's really not us in our industry, but the wider consumer. And it's really important that if you're ever having conversations with anybody, if it says Scotch beef or Scotch lamb on the label, you can be absolutely guaranteed that it's been born on a Scottish farm and raised there. It's been fed assured feed. It's been transported in an assured lorry. It's gone through an assured auction market, and it's been processed and assured processor. So it's whole of life, whole of supply chain. And that's an absolute guarantee for customers. And it's really, really important that they understand that, because that's what they're looking for. In our develop sort of pillar, we have industry development, which Beth is part of, and that's the real farmer facing side. And that's the department that runs the monitor farms and the grazing groups and things like this. And recently they've also been doing some fantastic podcasts, webinars, and just engaging with people in a different way, because they've done a fantastic job. And we also have a strategic engagement department under the develop pillar, and we are currently developing the beef strategy 2030. And I would encourage you, if you've got any ideas about what the beef industry in particular should look like in 10 years' time, please let us know, because it is going to be you that's in that industry, and we're really looking for feedback on that item. So if you do have any ideas about the beef industry in general, please feed them back to us through Beth or through any of the other members of QMS, because we really want to hear from you. And we have identified that the younger voice is one that's missing from that consultation. And the biggest job of all we've got really is to protect our industry. Things like veganuary and the anti-red meat agenda are a big threat to us. And so we are doing our best to protect our industry against that, to counteract misinformation, and to try to get positive messages out there as often as we can. So what we are asking from you really is, we're asking you for feedback to us. We're trying to listen to everybody in the industry and hear all the voices and take on board all the advice that we can. And this group will hopefully be a really good vehicle for you to feed back to us on what we could do for you. Like I said, we have various committees that are set up. We have marketing advisory group committees, we have industry development committees, and it would be great to have some younger voices on those. And then in a few years' time, there's the QMS board, which we're always looking for new people with new ideas and new voices on that. So it's maybe not for you right now, but there's nothing to stop you applying, but just keep it in mind, because if without all these different things, we can't really do our best to offer a wide range to everybody in the industry. So we're here to listen, basically. So please do feedback and give us your thoughts. So hopefully I've not gone over time, Beth. Is that okay?
Thank you, Kate. As Kate's just explained very well to you there, we really need input from the farming industry and the younger farming industry to keep us relevant and up to date with our levy payers. So that is true right across the industry. So these groups will hopefully give that opportunity for young people to get their opinions heard and recognised, and we can take action from there as well. So we've had a question for you come in there, Kate. Can you describe your journey to chair and how you first got involved with QMS?
Yeah, so yeah, it's not something I would ever have thought I would ever do, actually, and it's just circumstance that's got me here. So I always wanted to be a farmer. I grew up on a farm, obviously, wanted to be a farmer. There wasn't really enough work here, and my dad said I had to go and do something else. So I went, luckily enough, to get into vet school, and I went and trained as a vet and worked as a vet for a bit. Then met my husband, foot and mouth came along. It was a horrible time, and we decided to come home and farm, basically. So came back here. So I was just a farmer, and we have a local agricultural discussion group, and we both went along one night, and a chap called Rob Livesley from down the borders was speaking to us on it, and he had been a monitor farmer, and it really, really piqued my interest. I just thought it was a really good idea. He was the first one in Scotland, actually, and when the idea was floated and people showed that there could be a monitor farm here, we applied for it and we're really lucky to be chosen. So that was really the first step. And through that process of 3 years where you have meetings and you have people come onto your farm, you just sort of develop, you start to speak a bit more, and you start to realise that you know what you're talking about. You know, it's your farm, of course you do, you know what you're talking about, and it just gives you that bit of confidence. And then I did the Rural Leaders Programme, which again gives you a bit more self-confidence, just gives you a bit more sort of ambition, and helps get contacts and things. You build up networks. It all sounds very corporate, but it's just making pals with people, you know, it's just making new friends all over the place. And that sort of made me confident enough to apply to join the QMS board. And I really, really seriously did not think that I would get it. All I wanted was an interview. That's all I wanted. And when I got an interview, I was over the moon. I thought, right, I've done it. And when they actually appointed me to the board, I was completely blown away. And I went along, and there was all these big names there, you know, the president of Sam W, and the chair of Morden, and just all these people that you've seen in the newspaper and never met. And I was quite intimidated to start off with, to be fair, because I really didn't. I walked into that room and didn't know anybody. And then you realise they were all really friendly, and you realise that all these people who you thought were quite intimidating are just people like you. And you realise that you do know your stuff in your area, and you learn from other people who maybe have other areas that you don't know anything about. And so when Jim McLaren stood down and the chair position was available, I just thought I would have a go at it. And I was really, really unsure. And I do remember driving back from a board meeting once and thinking to myself, you're mad, Kate. What are you doing applying for this? You can't be Jim McLaren. How on earth do you think you can be Jim McLaren and do that job? And then I had a bit of a light bulb moment, and I thought to myself, do you know what? You don't have to be Jim McLaren. You just need to be you, and you just need to do things your way. And it's all a case. It's just all these little things you do throughout your life, and they all just build up and add together, and they give you the experience to do another thing. And I would just say, my advice would be, if you get an opportunity to do something, just have a go. And if it's pushes you out your comfort zone, it'll be difficult the first time, but it'll be easier the second time. So just take any opportunities you can.
That's great. Thanks very much, Kate. So Kate's discussed the QMS benefit to the groups, but there are huge benefits for the individuals and their businesses from being involved in a discussion community or benchmarking group. Andrew Marchant has had personal experience in this. Andrew and his wife Aileen run Clonee Farm, a 300-hectare upland farm in the south of Scotland. Before the couple took over the tenancy of Clonee in March 2012, Andrew was a manager of a dairy and beef unit in Castle Douglas. But the aim was always to run their own farm business. The Marchants started to lease the 93-hectare Clonee farm from Buccleuch Estates in 2012. Since then, they have taken on more land from Buccleuch as they have expanded. I will pass over to Andrew to introduce his business and his journey from starting out as a new entrant to the well-established operation he runs now.
Thanks, Beth. Thanks for that introduction and for the chance to come and speak to you all tonight. Hope everyone's in good form and keep putting one foot in front of the other. It's getting a bit endless now, but we can see a light at the end of the tunnel. Yeah, so a bit of background. I wasn't from a farming background, farming family. My father was involved in agriculture through education, but we didn't farm. I got the bug from a young age, just living in a rural area, and it snowballed from there. My careers advisors at school told me I was mad when I said I wanted to be a farmer, and so did everyone else actually. So I was told I would never be. I was wasting my time because I didn't have a farm to go back to. So I went and did a couple of years of engineering and hated that. So I dropped out and started. I'd always worked on farms anyway, so I dropped out of that. Went and did a bit of travelling and worked in Australia, and had a rare old time, but decided I better maybe knuckle down at one point. So I went to Edinburgh and got a degree in agriculture. and set about my career from there, I suppose. I always had a notion that I would like to farm in my own right. I've always been keen on business and quite, I suppose, quite entrepreneurial from an early age. Some would say tight, but so I've always had that notion I'd like to run my own business. But my thought was always that if I couldn't, because I knew how hard it was going to be, if I couldn't, then being a farm manager would be the next best thing, and quite often might is quite often a better option than trying to start yourself. But so yeah, I managed to work my way up and made it to managing a good size farming business. I was very fortunate with that opportunity. I was quite young when I got that job. I was only about 25, and I was put in charge of quite a large business with a lot of responsibility. So it was a fantastic opportunity, and it was the experience I needed, and really the next step to prove myself that I could farm in my own right. So usual story, we were looking up and down the country to try and find a farm to rent. I'm sure a lot of people will know that story all too well. It's not really got any easier, unfortunately. I thought 10, 12 years ago when we started looking, I thought by now things would be a bit better, but unfortunately there's not been an awful lot of change. So yeah, we were scouring the country for somewhere to rent. However, I wasn't going to farm at all costs. I had a good job. I enjoyed the job I was in and good prospects. So as keen as I was to start my own business, I wasn't going to do it just for the sake of calling myself a farmer. It had to be somewhere I felt had potential to be a commercially viable business, and I also had no interest in part-time farming. That's not, I have a great respect for a lot of people who do manage to part-time farm, but it wasn't for me. I really liked running, a large-scale business, and I was really interested in having a commercially viable business. So I needed to see that if we could take a place, it would need to have potential. So we were fortunate. We got the tenancy of Clonhee in 2012. At that point, we had 12 ewes and 93 hectares, and we just set about building a business from there. My wife's a school teacher, so that allowed us to have a steady income. Because the other thing was, we felt that at least one of us had to have a real job if we were gonna keep the show on the road and grow at the pace we wanted to grow at. I was quite adamant that I didn't want to. I'm quite impatient, and I wanted to build a viable business as quick as I could. So the route we took to that was to go full throttle for 3 or 4 years and head down arse up is probably the best way of putting it, and grow the business as quick as we could, so that I could then be at home full time. And the way we did that was I worked away from home full time and reinvested all that into buying stock, and we did various other things like grazing cattle and wintering cattle, and then I worked away from home, shearing sheep and feeding cattle and driving combines and anything I could do just to make money. So yeah, that worked fine. And after 4 years, I was at home full time, and we'd been lucky enough to add a bit more land on. So we now had over 300 hectares there, which gave us the scope I felt we needed to push on. 2018 we entered into a joint venture with our landlord, with Buccleuch, and we started a deer farm. I'd always been interested in deer farming and was really keen to start. However, it was difficult as a tenant because of the capital outlay at the start. So we spoke to our landlord about our idea, and they were actually looking at it at the same time. So it worked out quite well, and we've done a joint venture with them. So that's been great, and that's just where we are today. We were up at about 1,100 ewes. We've cut them back a bit now. The balance wasn't quite right in the farm, and that's something I'll speak about more to do with the monitor farm. And we've some cattle and deer on there as well now. So if we probably go into the next slide now, I think, Beth. I just thought I'd say a wee bit about business development, because it's, as I mentioned before, it's really hard to get that start, and people often get hung up on getting that start and getting that first bit of land or first tenancy or whatever it may be. But quite often it gets a lot harder after that, because then the pressure's on, and if you want to develop that business, you've got to do the hard yards then. To get the chance in the first place of establishing a business and you really are relying on getting someone to take a chance on you a lot of the time. You're relying on someone giving you that chance to farm their land or whatever it may be. So firstly, you've got to get experience. As I said, I've got a degree. I don't know if that makes a heck of a lot of odds. It looks good on paper. It probably helped me get a farm manager's job, and it looks good when I apply to an estate or something like that. But I didn't learn a great deal from it when I was there. But it's the other experience you gain that's really important. And if you're hoping to rent a farm from someone, you need to prove yourself. Nobody owes you a living. Nobody owes you the chance to farm. You've got to get out there, and there's so much competition for these things that you've got to prove yourself. So you've got to. For me, I did that by getting a farm manager's job and proving that I could run a large business, which gave them the faith that I would be able to cut it, really. So that's getting experience is key. Relationships is a massive one for us. We've put a lot of emphasis on building relationships with who we see as key players in our business, which mainly is the landlord and the bank. There's other ones in there as well, but they're the two that I really need to try and keep happy, especially the bank manager. Financing a new venture is notoriously difficult. We remortgaged the house and put our life savings in and managed eventually to get a bank to match fund us. So we set up, we did that and cracked on, and it was risky at the time, and I don't know if I would maybe take the same chance now when I'm 10 years down the line and a little bit older and wiser. But I was very. Probably you get a bit more risk averse as you move forward, but I'm still pushing on. But so for us, the bank was a really important relationship to build. So as soon as we got started with them, I put a lot of emphasis on profit's important, and we've made a profit every year. We've had some really bad years where it seemed really hard, but we've always managed to turn a profit mainly by keeping fixed costs low, and by still trying to maintain a reasonable output. And cash flow is king. They want to see you bringing cash in, and you do not. The last thing you want to be doing is going back to your bank manager every couple of months asking for an extension on your overdraft. So it's all about proving to them that you can do what you say you're going to do. And that then starts to build a track record, and things get so much easier once you're a couple of years in and you start to build up a rapport with a bank manager and a landlord. And if you do what you say you're going to do, you work hard, you improve the place, you start and achieve these things, then life becomes a bit easier, and you get a bit of a snowball effect, and people will maybe start talking about you, and your name will get dropped in an odd place, and opportunities will start to come. And as hard as it seems quite often at the start of your when you're at the first rung in the ladder, but all of a sudden, if you keep doing what you're doing, there's no such thing as luck. If you work hard, you'll bring yourself some luck. So, and I've put in there open-minded and flexible, because I think a lot of people get hung up in the idea that when they're wanting to start a business, or even they're at home and they already have a farm business, but they're trying to find their way in that business and wonder how they're going to establish it. A lot of people get hung up with the idea that I must rent a farm, I must get a tenancy, rent a farm, I must get bigger, I must do this, must do that. But there's a lot of other opportunities out there now. I mentioned there before, we're part of a joint venture, and likes of joint ventures, share farming agreements, contract farming agreements. We're about to start one of them next week. We've got a joint venture already. I think there's a lot of opportunity out there, but you've got to be a bit open-minded and flexible about it. Just saying, I want to rent a farm, but I'm only going to rent it if it's within 2 miles of where I live just now, and it's going to have a shed, because I'm only doing it if I can have black cows and bull them with a Charlie. That's the only way I'm farming. Well, you're making it a pretty niche opportunity you're looking for there. Like, you know, if you can be a bit more open-minded and flexible, you know, if I need to change my breed of sheep tomorrow, I'll change them. You know, if that's going to make me more money, it's going to open up opportunities. You know, if I can get better genetics elsewhere, if I, you know, we brought in a whole new enterprise with the deer, and you just, I think when opportunities are hard to come by, being open-minded and flexible really helps. Yeah, so if we move on to, I don't know what's on the next slide, Beth, is there another one? All right, yeah. So we were a monitor farm and started in 2017, I think it was, or 16. It came at a really nice time for us. We'd been farming for about 5 years at the time, and we'd been ploughing on, building numbers, trying to grow a business, and in some ways we'd been reasonably successful because we had built up a good number of stock, and I was at that point able to work at home full time. However, we weren't doing anything very well. Our technical performance was terrible. Although we were doing okay financially, we weren't doing anything particularly well. I'd had my head down for so long that I wasn't really open to a lot of things that I should have been. So it came at a good time for us just to take a step back and have a real look at the business. So when we became a monitor farm, it's quite daunting. It's a difficult thing to do. You invite people onto your farm, you open up your books, you basically open up your family home and to a lot of scrutiny, and it's difficult to. We had a couple of hard years during the monitor farm program. We had beasts from the east and a drought, and we had all sorts of things, and we had some pretty grim results right through the middle of it. And although we'd made a lot of changes and we could see we were making some real positive changes, we had to stand up. There was a few times I had to stand up in front of a blooming whiteboard and explain a lot of figures to people that were pretty depressing, and it was bad enough me looking at them myself without telling everyone else about them. But what you quickly found was that, you know, you get the odd smart arse that's, you know, every egg's a double yolk and all that kind of thing. But the majority of people there are in the same boat and want you to do well and are genuinely there to try and improve their business and to share ideas and knowledge, which is what it's all about. So we found it was a fantastic experience, and it's opened up a lot of doors and a lot of opportunities to us. And I think it will keep doing that for us for years to come. I also think that it's only really now that we're starting to see probably the benefits and the results of a lot of the changes we made during the monitor farm program. A lot of the results are only starting to come through now, which is just the nature of farming. You know, it can take 2 or 3 years to start and see some real results. But I think in a couple of years' time, it'll be quite exciting what we're trying to achieve and what actually starts to happen. Although I was cursing it today when I was fixing an electric fence for about the 573rd time after my gimmers had broke through it on my forage crop, which seemed such a good idea when it was standing in the field looking great in January. But anyway, we're resilient if nothing else, so we'll keep putting that fence back up and loving life. What I would say about discussion groups is, I think a bit what Kate said about, I was really involved with young farmers as well, and had a fantastic time, and I got a hell of a lot out of young farmers, and can't rate it highly enough. A lot of the stuff you learn is just fantastic, and especially for me coming from a non-farming background, it gave me a heck of a lot. And I think that from what I've seen of the groups here that Beth's proposing to start, I think this could be a great addition to what a lot of people are already doing in young farmers, but it could also be a bit of a lead into the sort of things you could be doing post YF when you get a bit older. And quite often there's a bit of a gap between finishing young farmers and where do you go after that, because you feel you're too young for the NFU meetings. So this getting a bit of a transition might be a really good thing, and I think trying to tie the two in together is a great idea. Discussion groups as a whole, what I would say, number one, is that what you should always remember is this is a business. Although we're farming, and on the last Farming Life programme, if I heard that guy say one more time that it wasn't about the paycheck, he just did it because he liked it. I mean, no offence to him, because I'm sure they plucked that quote out. He probably didn't mean anything when he said it, but they used it every time. And if I heard them say one more time, it's not about the paycheck, I thought, oh, God almighty, it's a business. And yeah, we all do it because we love it. And I hear people, oh, we do it for the lifestyle. Well, I understand what they're meaning, but for us, when we've started from scratch and put everything in from day one, it's got to be a business, and it's that first and foremost before it's anything else. And I do like the lifestyle it gives me most of the time. And it's, it brings a lot of benefits. However, you've got to just keep that in the front of your mind all the time, that this is a business. And, there's a lot of volatility in our markets now. There's, subsidies are going to reduce. It's only getting harder. And the only way that you're going to maintain and we're going to have sustainable businesses is to remember that it is a business. So my experience in discussion groups have been tremendous. I mean, we're currently in one, which we formed off our own back with a number of mainly people we went through the Monitor Farm programme with. We're just a group of like-minded people that are trying to similar businesses, trying to achieve similar things. But what a discussion group brings you is it gives you a platform. You tend to find the people that are in the discussion groups are the people that are like-minded. They tend to be progressive. They understand their business. A lot of the best farmers I've come across, it always surprises me how open they are and how willing they are to share what they do. And I always think that's a sign of a really good business person and a great farmer, is if they're willing to share and tell you how they do it and why they do it. And you tend to attract these type of people. With the discussion group, I mean, I get a lot out of it business-wise, and I think we hold each other to account on what we're doing. And the further into that the group we get, the more that happens. I think there's a lot of onus on yourself. You've got to be honest and open, honest with your own figures. There's so many people. I had people who used to give me a grilling at Monitor Farm meetings because they'd say my lambing percentage wasn't good enough, and if you asked them theirs, they wouldn't even know what it was. So a lot of it's just knowing your figures and being honest with yourself, because you can't move forward if you don't actually know. But with the groups, I think if you can have a peer group of people that are like-minded and positive, it makes a heck of a difference. One of the big things for me is trying to surround myself with positive people. We all know people that you come off the phone to and you feel motivated and you feel, right, come on, I need to get on. You feel great, you feel upbeat. And you all know the other type of people that you come off the phone and you feel thoroughly depressed, and they've really dragged you down. And I think in business especially, you've got, if you can surround yourself, find that right type of people. I suppose it's a bit like the V that Doug Avery was talking about and that type of thing. But if you can find that group of positive people, and not yes people necessarily, because that's dangerous as well. There's, we know people as well. If you're struggling with a question, and you know that if you phone that person, they'll be like, oh yeah, oh you're great, go for it, do that. That's dangerous. Don't confuse the two. But if you can give yourself that support network and the contacts, it's a bit like Kate was saying, rural leadership. I did the rural leadership program as well, and the more contacts you have, the better. It makes a heck of a difference to my business now, just the amount of contacts we've made through all the things we've done in the last 5 or 6 years. And most problems you come up against are somebody you can phone and pick their brains. So yeah, there's a lot in it for everybody that way. And I think I've mentioned there accountability. So yeah, you've got to be accountable to yourself, and when you're trying to start a business or run a business, and be honest with yourself, and also mental health. I mean, I think something that I always felt was quite maybe underestimated was the social side of the Monitor Farm meetings, and it was something that was never really mentioned, but we found it was tremendous. We had good attendances throughout, and it always felt like a really good social event. And I think there's so many of us now working on our own and quite isolated that, if you can go along to meetings, but like so if you've got a discussion group and you've got a WhatsApp group with it or something like that, it makes a heck of a difference to me. I don't mind saying I work myself all the time, and it's great having a few groups that you can get a bit of chat and a bit of banter, and it just it helps your mental health and the whole social side of it as well. That's probably all I was going to say, Beth, if that's all right.
Thank you very much, Andrew. I think you've shown how it takes a lot of hard work, determination, but the support that you can get from these kind of groups is great. And I think you're absolutely right. The Monitor Farm programme did provide a lot of social, and I know going along to the first Monitor Farm meeting, well, my first Monitor Farm meeting down with you, there was a real buzz about it, and everyone was always looking for new ideas from other people just at these meetings. So there's a lot of benefits to them. I think we'll definitely be looking forward to getting back out after the pandemic. We've got a couple of questions for you, Andrew. Firstly, do you have a top tip for somebody that's recently joined the farming industry?
That's recently joined the farming industries? Is that what
Yeah.
you said? Sorry, I lost you there. Yeah. A top tip, oh gee, that's a difficult one. I don't know whether it's for someone that's recently joined or not, but I think anyone in general, you know, if you've got an idea and you've got a goal that you've set yourself a goal and you want to get into the farming industry, then go for it. You know, don't let anything help hold you back. But I think I would go back to what I said before. It's all about meeting people and getting experience and getting out there and proving yourself, because farming industry is very small, and if you get out there and prove yourself, whether that be just, you know, getting a bit of work experience, doing, you know, it's amazing how word travels and how very quickly, if you prove yourself as being keen and interested and a hard worker and these type of things, you know, it's amazing what that can do in itself, you know, just as a start.
That's great. And what was the biggest barrier you faced as a new entrant? If there was one to pick, I'm sure there was many, as you've explained. Do you think there was one particular?
It's chicken and egg. It's either finance or land, and we've had this debate loads of times. You know, if you've no land, if you can't get access to land, you don't need the finance. But if you get access to land, you can't do it without the finance, and it's the two go hand in hand, unfortunately. But as I say, I think although there's still not a lot of tenancy agreements coming on the market, it doesn't appear. I do think there is a genuine shift, and there is opportunities out there, but you know, for share farming, contract farming, these type of things. So there is opportunities there if you look hard enough and you speak to the right people. But don't be scared to put yourself out there. You know, don't be scared to tell people, I'm looking to rent a farm. I want to farm my own right. I'm looking for an opportunity. You know, if someone's looking to take a step back maybe from their business, you know, I'm looking for an opportunity to try and get involved in a business. You know, I think there's lots of options out there.
We'll move on from the questions just now, but we'll come back to, there's a few questions in the chat and the Q&A. We'll come back to them just shortly. So in terms of the groups, where do we go from here? You will receive an email from me tomorrow morning, which will include a survey link. This will let me allocate people into groups and give me an idea of common themes of interest, so I can look to arrange some topic speakers. If you've not already started, you may be about to get very busy with lambing, calving and spring work. So the plan is not to start in the first meeting until May, so we can really hit the ground running then. I hope, in the meantime, I hope to set everybody up into regional WhatsApp groups to share ideas, and this will be an easy way to communicate with meeting ideas, etc. as well. So please look out for my email over the next 24 hours. But we've got a few questions still in the chat. Pull them up here. We have a question for you, Kate. It's largely to do with direct selling. So what can QMS do to help small scale producers selling red meat direct from farm to customers? The route of getting produce from farm direct to the customer isn't easy one, given small scale producers struggle to reach economies of scale. There is also issues at time with getting animals slaughtered locally and processed when you are considered private kill. Any advice on this?
I wish I had a magic wand. This is actually one of my big hobby horses, really, we need more small abattoirs. It just isn't going to work. This local selling isn't going to work without the processing facilities there. And the people in power need to realise that abattoirs are infrastructure. You know, they're community benefit as much as piers and harbours are for fishermen. So we need these smaller abattoirs. Now there's a place for big ones as well. We're never going to sell everything direct to the consumer. That's not going to happen. But for the people that do want to supply direct, they need to have those facilities there. I was up in Shetland a couple of years ago, and they have got a fantastic example of a small abattoir there, which has been built so that it can be operated really easily just by one person, and it's not there to make a profit. It's community owned, and they don't necessarily have to, it has to wash its face, but it doesn't have to operate commercially and make a profit for people. So I think really what we need to do as a country, not just the industry, because this involves public money as well, probably, is try and replicate that around about the country so that there is more access, because they are just getting less and less, and places like the island ones on Mull and stuff, that they struggle all the time to make a profit because of where they are, and you know, they can't operate commercially. So we really need to think as a society about that, and I can assure you that I bring this up at just about every meeting I'm in. I've never got anywhere yet, but we're keeping the pressure on. But this whole buy local phenomenon that's kind of come with the pandemic is definitely putting some impetus behind that as well. And you know, like I say, because local and carbon footprints and sustainability, you need the infrastructure in place to do that. So we're pushing that all the time, but that's not going to be a quick fix or an easy fix. We do have a marketing team, as I said, and they are there to help anybody who's selling Scotch beef or Scotch lamb or specialty pork. And they can give you advice. They're quite happy to give advice on marketing ideas. We have a huge sort of amount of social media stuff and advice and leaflets and all this sort of thing. We have loads of stuff like that. We have giveaways, hats and things like that to try and get the marketing out there. So if you have an idea and you think we could help, then please do get in touch with us. If it is something that we can help with, we will do. We're bound by state aid rules, so there's a limit to some things we can do and some things we can't sort of legally, and we obviously also have a budget, but we do have people in place that can help you with marketing. And as I say, I'm going to keep banging the drum for small abattoirs for as long as I get a voice and somebody listens to me.
Thanks very much, Kate. I don't know if Andrew's ever had any experience in direct selling at all.
No, is the short answer. But I think it's a great thing to do, but for us, it just wasn't going to fit in with my wife owns a school teacher, so she's pretty busy tied up with that, and with a young family, and we just couldn't find time to do that as well. So we made a conscious decision that it wasn't the line we were going to go down, because it just wasn't feasible for us. So it's not something we have done, but I think there's great opportunities there. But I have a great respect for everyone that does it, because it's blooming hard work.
Yeah, absolutely. We've got a question in the chat as well. The public need to think of all domestically produced food as locally produced. Kate, do you have a view? There's obviously been a big shift towards local as a result of the pandemic, but do you have any more thoughts on local and where we can see that going?
I think it's been very obvious. We've seen increased sale of Scottish meat during this pandemic, and I think it's very obvious that there's a lot of people who want to buy Scottish, and you're right, local really means Scottish. I mean, if you can get more local than that, that's great. But most people would think that if they bought Scottish, they're buying local. But I think it's obvious that we've seen that when people get a choice, when when they can only buy their food in the supermarket and there's 2 bits of meat and one's got a Scottish label on it, they'll probably pick up that. Not all of them by any means, and cost does come into it, but we've really seen a swing towards that. I think when we get food service and hospitality open again, that's an area that we really have to work in, because I think we're all the same. I mean, you might, if you were in a top end restaurant and getting a steak, you might ask where it come from and want it to be local. But who goes into Greg's and buys a steak bake and asks where the meat came from? You know, so consumers don't have that choice in a lot of food service because they don't know where it's come from. And I think they'd like to. So I think those are the sort of things that we have to try and develop so that people can make that decision if they want to. And like I say, I think a lot of them really, really do. You know, they really want to support their local farmers. Butchers are great because they know when they go to the butcher, or most butchers, that they know where the meat's coming from. But it's just those other places it's hidden, and it's not through people trying to be dishonest. It's just the way that it's developed, and that's maybe where we need to start trying to flag things up and saying, look, if you want to buy local, this is how you do it.
That's great. We've got a final question here. Do you have to be a certain age to join these groups? We are targeting the young farmer age as more younger producers, but there is no age. It's an all-inclusive platform, so encourage anyone that would like to come along to please get involved with these groups. So that kind of brings us out of time this evening. So finally, I just need to thank Kate and Andrew for speaking tonight. We've had great insight into the workings of QMS and the development of Andrew's business. I hope, like me, you've taken something away from this evening. And thank you to everyone that's come along and got involved in the discussion. And look out for my email for getting involved in the groups. I hope you enjoy the rest of your evening.